So we're back with the MSI motherboard and we're attempting to repair it. We still have trouble with our AGP slot. In a previous video we went around and checked out the temperatures on the MOSFETs and we observed that the mainboard was just going into a reset cycle once those MOSFETs were getting nice and hot. So I suggest you go back and watch that video if you want to kind of understand the kind of reasoning behind replacing the MOSFETs. With that said, just remember I'm just a guy with a soldering iron, and check out the links in the description for more information and kind of, better details and explanations on a lot of the more technical aspects. So it's going to be a while before those MOSFETs arrive. So let's just hit pause for a second because I was about to talk a lot of rubbish here about how the core cell chip was monitoring temperature. Of course, that's not how it works. I'll put links in the description to kind of better explanations of how MOSFETs work and the relationship between current and temperature. So, current and temperature in the MOSFETs are directly related, and what I suspect is happening is temperature's basically running away. Now, the core cell chip doesn't have to detect temperature, it can just detect spikes in current. The actual AGP bus runs on a relatively low voltage but a high current. When the current gets out of control, the temperature goes up and the core cell chip detects the spike in current and resets. So even though we have the correct voltage supply, our current is spiking and hence the temperature run away. My hunch is right, I think is right here. We'll know once I replace the MOSFET. They're not switching fast enough, so the temperature is basically running away. So the smaller cards aren't putting strain on the FETs, so the temperature never gets to that peak value where it just goes into the reset cycle. That's what I think is happening. I could be completely wrong once we change out these FETs. So the reason I'm removing, and I kind of debated whether I needed to remove this, I was going to do just this FET and that FET. But I have like 9 MOSFETs coming, so I may as well replace all 4 around the AGP slot, because it is a matter of time. If it's a case that 2 of these have kind of weakened or kind of gotten out of spec in throughout the years, then the chances are the others are going to be the same in a short matter of time. Okay, so I've gone through the all the pins on the back, and I've, with the tweezers, given them a little wiggle to make sure that they're free. And now I have to try and get the AGP slot out. Being weary of the kind of surface mount components, so that I'm not like putting pressure on knocking any capacitors off the board or anything like that. Okay, it's nearly off. Okay, so that's not good. So even after trying to do this the right way, some pins have decided to stay on the board. It seems kind of obvious now to say this, but I guess this is all part of learning and electronics and that. Nothing comes free. I should have used hot air on the back of the board when removing the port. If I had just kind of like done the desoldering and then just kind of hot aired the board around and just literally held it on one side and just run the hot air up and down, I probably could have got this off without pulling pins. This isn't the end of the world. I will be able to get the pins back in here because I'll try and get this on camera if it'll focus in. There you go. So if you notice, there's a clear pattern to the pins. Every second pin has this kind of bend. So I've separated all the pins that I removed, and what we'll do is we'll put them back in according to that kind of pattern of bend. Less than ideal, but I'll cut back once I've done that. Okay, so I'm going to clean up around here. But yeah, that was a pain in the ass. In future, if I ever have to do anything like this, I'm gonna set up the hot air, and just once I've desoldered all the pins, I'm gonna like gently grab it here and heat it on the other side. Don't even have to heat it up that much, I'd imagine, just enough so that the pins come away with the port and you're not left in the situation I was, where you've got to get it back together. The holes along the top here, if you look in there, you'll be able to see if the pin has gone all the way in and is home. I will have to get a tweezers and kind of go through and straighten up all these before I put them in, but they're all flush along the top. The alternating pattern of pins makes it easy once you sort out the pins and kind of separate them out into two piles. It's easy to know where the pins go back in. Hopefully I haven't melted any of the plastic in there that makes it kind of maybe a looser fit. I think it's going to be fine though. I'm not worried about that. Yeah, if you look here, this capacitor and that capacitor are quite close to the MOSFET there. So I'm considering, should I just desolder those guys just to make my life easier? And I think I will. I think it's probably best, especially this guy here. It's really close. This guy, yeah, I'll probably do that as well. Okay, so you've probably guessed it, guys. We're going to go for it. We're going to take these off with hot air. So I'm just going to reposition the camera, make it a little easier for you to see. Because once I start, I just want to zip them all off. Okay, so we're pretty clean here. Just gonna go around and check, is there any kind of sticky bits? No, I got most of the flux off. I've seen some people don't use that much flux when they're, using the hot air rework, but I tend to, because maybe it's in my mind, but I always imagine the flux getting in under and kind of activating the solder underneath, so it just in my mind makes things a little easier, especially with these ground tabs. These are quite hefty, So one disadvantage of kind of removing all the MOSFETs and not doing one at a time, just doing like a shotgun approach like this, is that we won't know which one actually failed. So for now we're going to kind of go on the assumption that it was this guy here, the MOSFET here. I think we were calling it C. I think it's Q43 on this silk screen there. So yeah, we're blaming this guy and his buddy down here. But we may never really know unless I replace all the MOSFETs here and we're still not working. Then yeah. So they finally arrived from Hong Kong. So there you can see our PhD 45N03 LTA MOSFETs. So we're going to start with this guy here. Before I put flux on here, I'm just going to give it a quick rub with alcohol. I'm going to do the same here on the back of the actual MOSFET. So we're going to start with Q50. I'm just going to put a little bit of flux on there, but this is my idea. So I am going to try and just touch the iron off the fluxy wet bit there and slowly introduce this if I just stop banging it around the place. Okay, because I'm using the camera here as kind of a poor man's microscope as well, which perhaps isn't a great idea. Doing this on camera considering I've never done it before. What am I at? 405. Gonna bump the heat up, reposition that again and try again. 420. Oh, there we go. That's what I wanted to see. You can actually see the flux moving inside, underneath. Okay, so that's that done. Okay, so now we're going to do the legs. I don't know what the name for that is when your iron compensates for like that thermal, you know, the lack of thermal mass, is it? I can't remember. Anyways. This iron, although it's 60 watts, this soldering station, it's not great. Can't recover quick enough from those kind of big ground plane moments. Okay, that's the next one on. So yeah, just cleaning the board with a bit of alcohol, some flux down there. That's good. So yeah, Q43 was our one that was actually giving us a little bit of trouble. Oh, it's moved on us. Stay put. Okay, two-handed affair there. Decided to go walkabout. God damn it. Okay, so maybe this is a two-handed kind of thing that I need to just kind of gently hold it there. Famous last words, I'm not going to worry about that bit of solder on the back tab. Gonna put a bit more flux on those and flow them again, because that was crap. There we go. That looks nice. Where are we? Here we are. I want to get these caps back on that I removed just to make my life easier around these places. And then I'll cut back once I'm done. There's no point in showing you caps, that's boring. So just to kind of make a quick comment about the MOSFETs and when I was soldering them. I think when you see the flux underneath start to bubble, that's when the solder is actually kind of moving in underneath. And then they kind of float on that bed of molten solder and they kind of start moving around. So anymore when I'm doing them in the future, I'm just going to kind of, you know, as I move the iron in, you know, once I've got a bit of solder on there, and just before, when I start to notice that it starts to bubble like that, I'm just going to hold them in place. You know, hold them on the sides with slight downward pressure and just let it bubble away like that. I mean, they're on now and I'm happy with them. It's just, you know, that's something I learned from doing them, that once you get that kind of initial bit of solder on there, just to kind of, as soon as you see the flux starting to bubble underneath and kind of start poking out the sides here and bubbling out the sides, that's when you want to kind of get your tweezers on them and just kind of hold them in place. So what we have to do next is get the AGP slot back on. So I still have the old one. It would possibly go on there quite easily, but knowing me, you probably guessed it, I sourced some new AGP slots. So rather than take a chance after going to all the effort of replacing the MOSFETs, recapping the board, you know, if I did damage this AGP slot edge connector, then yeah, that would be a shame. So if that was then to kind of flummox us, so yeah, we're going to put a new AGP slot on. So we're going to put the new AGP board edge connector on. So here is the new one, nice and brown, or is it kind of, well, yeah, it's dark brown. And yeah, I got this from Mouser in the US. These must be still used in some application that you can buy them new like that. I know it's going to make the board look a little kind of silly in a sense that, you know, we're going to have a brown AGP slot instead of the original red one. It's not going to have the retention bracket back here. You may notice that we have a different heatsink and kind of North Bridge heatsink and fan assembly here, and there's a good reason for that. I was online kind of looking at MSI boards and doing the usual Google search of, you know, the 865P Neo 2, the kind of model number. And this board came up in the search results under eBay. It had a broken latch back here. It was sold as broken for parts, and I was like, you know what? I'm really fond of this board. I'd like to keep it going. So I purchased this for like €5. It's got lots of parts, you know, even the bracket here. You know, everything on it I can reuse in the future should anything go wrong with this board. The only difference with this one, I think it's the Platinum Edition, it has the surround sound, whereas mine only has stereo, and this has surround sound, so you can see that down here is populated, whereas here it's unpopulated. So yeah, I took the heatsink assembly from the North Bridge and swapped them over. Obviously it's nice to have active cooling on this rather than just passive. Yeah, that's one of the hottest devices on the board, so I think that'll make a big difference. And it's also, when you're soldering to the back, it actually levels the board out a bit more, which is an added bonus. So let me fire up the soldering station, and we'll insert this. This literally just came out of the box, so hopefully it just kind of sits down into place without too much trouble. So, there's pilot holes if I line them up. Oh, and I did actually get some flux and just some braid and clean this area up. It wasn't that bad. 1 or 2 pins needed to be straightened, but all the center ones and all the kind of most of the outside ones were in place. But you can kind of see that they're all pretty much sticking out nice and proud here. These kind of locking guys are great. They were just plastic on the other one, but you can see they kind of lock it into place. So that's our AGP port on. That looks alright. There's a bit more air around here now, I guess. It's a really crappy kind of dog ate my homework for not putting the original slot on there, but I'd much rather have confidence in these pins than put on the old one and run the risk of having a dodgy pin. So I've cleaned it up a little bit at the back. Most of the flux is off. I might give it a quick once over and a bit of air, and we should be good. So new MOSFETs, new AGP slot, and yes, I'm nervous. I don't know how this is going to go. So I've got my crucial 120 gigabyte what is it, the BX500 cheap ass SSD. Enough procrastination. Oh, please don't blow up. Okay. GeForce 6200 AGP. I don't have a keyboard or a mouse. That's noise you're hearing, that's the fan on the north bridge. I might see if I might switch it back to the other heatsink if it's going to be that obnoxious. Okay, it's looking good so far. I do believe we have a boot. So I'm not going to save or install that card. I'm going to turn off. And we're going to get the 6600 LE. Give us the bars. Bars. We have bars. Oh no! We still have Glitchville though. Damn. Okay, so as you can see, Glitchville. I just don't get it. Gonna bust out the AS Rock board just to sanity check things. Okay, so I have a drive hooked up and we're going to install Windows XP. just to ensure that the 6600 is working correctly. So power this on. There we go. Whew, I was a little nervous there. Oh, drivers for the MSI board. So I have my legit copy of Windows XP Pro 32-bit. So there we go. So I needed to shut down to do something. So let me just quickly shut it down. I'll take out the Windows XP disk for now as well. But we will be installing Alice. American McGee's Alice. So I put Alice on there, but I forgot to install the Nvidia drivers, so that's what we're doing now, getting the drivers on. So restart now. That damn DVD drive is just so slow. If I do anything over the weekend after finishing work on this project, I'm going to clean that drive. Yay. Come on, there's nothing in the drive. There we go. God nabbit. What was happening here was that as soon as the computer would boot with the ASRock board into Windows XP, as soon as it would start loading that Nvidia driver, it'd crash. So I tried multiple drivers, and whatever I did, as soon as it would boot into Windows XP and start loading that driver, it would crash again and again and again. What that ultimately means is that the problem all along was that the GeForce 6600 was on the margins and was about to fail. Maybe it was a lucky shot that I got it working with the ASRock board first time around, but it's not working now. So I think this card was doomed from the start. The GeForce 6000 series comes in two flavors, PCIe and AGP. And the AGP ones use this guy. It's a bridge chip basically, so that they can get that PCIe design working on the older AGP bus. These run quite hot. Even on the card I had back in the day in the past, that would be hot to the touch. Now I did try cooling it with a fan, a 90mm fan, while I was testing it out and running it here. But I think the damage was done long ago. Running so hot and cooling down, those heat cycles may have cracked one of the BGA joints underneath the chip. Reflowing that isn't something a hobbyist can do easily. I've seen people do it, but you need a proper setup for BGA. You can do it, but it's not something that I'm set up to do, and probably won't be for some time. So I'm not going to sink any more time into this card. It's just not worth it. So all the work we done on this board didn't have to be done. bar the recap. It's nice to do a recap, especially on a board you're fond of, that you want to work for, you know, continually into the future. But as regards, you know, changing the MOSFETs, removing the AGP port, putting on new MOSFETs here, putting on a new AGP slot because we didn't trust the desolder job I did on the first one, or the original one rather, that didn't need to be done. There was essentially nothing wrong with this board. You'd think I would have learned my lesson. I've had one of these in the past on this board that you know, eventually died as well, a similar death. Yeah, I was quite tired and quite pissed off, frankly, last night when I was testing out this setup. I'm glad I didn't, you know, rework on a board is always risky, especially a multi-layer board that soaks up a lot of heat like this. I'm glad I didn't damage it with all the kind of changing of MOSFETs and putting on a new AGP port. Now, I could take off the heat sinks, reflow it and stuff like that, but BGA reflow with just a hot air gun and flux is pretty much just a waste of time. The only way to, if it is a problem with a cracked solder joint under the bridge chip, I suspect, then you know, your normal just, you know, drenching it in flux and hoping that, you know, applying heat for 5 minutes, like 300 degrees or so, to try and heat up the solder balls underneath and hope that that fixes it, you know, slim chance of that working. The only way you're going to do that is if you lift the chip, and once you lift the chip, you're into a whole other realm of kind of equipment that you're going to need to get that back on in alignment with new solder balls on it. So it can be done. I've seen people do it with just hobbyist setups without kind of real expensive kind of BGA rework stations, but it's not something that I'm going to take on for this card now anyways. I'm not going to throw it out, I'm going to hold on to it. So, in summary, we have a fully reworked board that didn't need to be reworked at all. This board is fine. I'm going to continue using it with the GeForce 6200, Windows XP 32-bit, 2 gigs of RAM and a Pentium 4. This will be my Pentium 4 machine setup. So we went down the rabbit hole yet again, descent into madness that didn't need to happen. I hold a grudge against these cards even more so than the last time, even though I should have learned my lesson from the first one of these I had. But there you go. I never claimed to be an expert when it comes to these things. I'm just an idiot with a soldering iron at the end of the day. So that has been this series of madness videos looking at the socket 478. Hopefully we'll see this board in the future when it comes to looking at different graphics cards and kind of different games and setups. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll chat to you all again.